Okay, so next we're going to talk about honest signals, and that's essentially those are essentially the manifestation of your sexual and to an extent your social value, right? Now, why are they honest signals? Where does that come from? That is something that comes from evolutionary biology, signaling theory, and that is how animals, including us, convey their sexual worth to others, right? How they signal their sexual worth. You know, whether it's a peacock or an orangutan, you know, or a bird, you know, what are those little birds called? The ones that have like those little mating dances, right? These are all forms of signaling to show that I am a superior mate or I am the right mate, right? And we too, you know, have all these forms of signaling. Now, the reason they're called honest signals is because you can't fake them. You really can't. Now, we as humans, because of our, you know, of our intelligence and our, you know, how do I put this? Evolved sense of evolution, because of our conscious ability to put on facades, we're able to fake it to an extent in the beginning, to a certain extent. So let's imagine I tell you to go up to this girl and say this one line that's kind of like cocky, funny, confident, and you know, to have a certain facial expression and to you know, to stand a certain way and have a certain body language, to project your voice a certain way, right? You might be able to pull most of that off, let's say. Maybe not the vocal stuff, that's a little bit more difficult, but you might be able to pull some of that off, right? But and she might think, oh, this guy's kind of confident, right? But very quickly, if you continue interacting with her, she'll quickly see right through that. She'll quickly get to know you're the real you. You can't put on a facade forever. Does that make sense? So, you know, there is an element of faking it till you make it, an inevitable element of faking it till you make it in self-development. And you have to accept that. And you know, at first when you're going to be doing this stuff, and we'll talk about some of these honest signals, but at first when you're going to be doing this stuff, it'll kind of come off as, it'll feel incongruent to you. It's like, you know, I'm telling you to say this thing, and you're like, that's not me. I don't even feel confident saying it, right? I don't feel congruent. Your tonality might be off, your body language might be off. You're trying to embody these qualities and characteristics of this other person, of a James Bond figure, or you know, maybe Vadim you saw on a YouTube video. You're like, I'm gonna say this one line, right? But over time, you will start to actually embody some of these qualities and characteristics. You know, you will become more confident. You will become more assertive. Your sense of humor might be more edgy and more risque, right? And it will be you. So over time, you will come into alignment, and these honest signals will be genuinely honest. Like, all the way through, right? It won't just be at the initial stage where you approach a girl and you're like, you know, hey, you know, what's up with your shoes? And you're trying to like pull off some kind of a confident thing. Like your confidence will kind of carry over. So that's actually the beauty of honest signals. You can read people very quickly. You can quickly figure out what's up with this person. Their true colors will shine through. It's interesting because, you know what, maybe we shouldn't discuss that. I want to kind of broach the topic of society. Remember how we got into it at the restaurant? Society doesn't really want you to improve. Now, we talked about, like, you know, from the economic side of it, right? What's a scalable kind of society, right? But here it's more like, I perceive you as a threat to me if you start to try to change or evolve. I like you the way you are right now. If you start to change, that's going to threaten my identity. So if you're trying to like become more confident or more assertive or better with women, like people will be like, dude, don't do that. That's not you. But what it's not even about you anymore. It's about them. They're threatened. They don't want to give you permission because you're now a threat to them, or you're a reminder to them that they're maybe not enough. So anyway, so see if you'll observe that, like if ever like anybody you meet or your friends are kind of like negative about this whole thing. It's very common. Yeah, it's almost like an attack at them. Oh, you're self-developing? Like you think you're better than me? I'm not self-developing. Does that mean I have to self-develop? Does that mean I'm not good enough with women? You know, they start having some kind of like a mini identity crisis. Okay, so before we get into what these honest signals are, we talked about why they're honest. We talked about how there's some element of faking it till you make it. So now this is an interesting one. As you try to fake it till you make it, right? As you try to move towards congruence, okay? You're gonna adopt or mimic some of these attractive qualities, like your body language and eye contact, and you're gonna project your voice, right? That, in turn, will help bring you positive reference experiences, which are gonna then feed into the growth of your masculine qualities, which will then help you to further improve your eye contact, deep and resonant tonality, which will again then reaffirm or strengthen your confidence, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like a vicious cycle that will help you come into congruence. So initially it might tell you, dude, you got to make like strong eye contact because that's an honest signal, because that's attractive. And maybe deep down you're like, but dude, like it's so hard for me to make eye contact with like, a powerful man or like a really hot woman. It's kind of threatening, right? But I'm gonna like do it, but it's awkward and uncomfortable. But as a result, you'll get a positive reference experience because the woman's gonna be like, oh shit, your eye contact is so on point. But then let's say over time, you actually will be super confident and your eye contact will be as a result on point. So now you're kind of in alignment. Make sense?
As a result of just practicing the eye contact?
Not only as a result of just practicing the eye contact, as a result of practicing it, but then as a result of also the reference experiences feeding in to your actual confidence, right? Now your actual confidence isn't just going to come from, making strong eye contact in night game situations. It might also come from making tough decisions with your business, moving to another city, right? But one of the first starting points when you're out in gaming is just holding eye contact in a less than comfortable situation. You can't immediately go and like move to a new city tonight and try living for 6 months and making new friends and making tough decisions and learning a new language. You can't do that. That will help complement you on your pickup journey and help you grow your confidence. But at the very least tonight you can go and try to make strong and relaxed eye contact with the girl sitting on the opposite couch. You could do that. And then she might be like, and then she might smile and say, oh, hey, blah, blah, blah. And then you might feel a little incrementally more confident in general. It's like, oh, this girl gave me a little positive reference experience because I put myself out there and I'm, made eye contact with her, et cetera, et cetera. So everything just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. Okay? Okay. So what are some of the honest signals? One, your eye contact. By the way, some of these are going to be more important than others. Okay? Let me quickly go through them and then I'll tell you which ones are most important and then we'll kind of go into them in depth. So eye contact. Deep and resonant vocal tonality. Controlled and varied vocal pace. Controlled and varied vocal. Okay. Eye contact. Strong and strong. We'll get into blah. Okay. Eye contact. Deep and resonant vocal tonality. Controlled and varied vocal pace. Controlled and varied vocal inflections with an emphasis on down talk. We'll get into that. Projection and enunciation. Dominant posture. Relaxed and composed body language. Controlled and varied facial expressions. These are the most important ones, okay? I would say, and let's talk about the other ones. So being positive and smiley, right, kind of feeds into the whole facial expression thing. Being expressive and free. Acts of confidence and leadership. That's also a pretty important one. Wit and humor. Indifference. Wisdom and experience. Boundaries. And social intuition. So let's start with eye contact. So eye contact is one of the more important ones. So anything to do with your tonality, body language, facial expressions, vocal pace. Yeah, anything to do with that is the most important on a signal because it's really a reflection of your internal state, right? Like if you think about it, your ability to hold strong eye contact, right? That has to be in situations with high social pressure, that is. Not just with, I don't know, when you're talking to your grandma or something, right? When you're talking to some like hot girl at a party who you think might be judging you, and, you know, or some fashion event or whatever, right? Or some dude who like looks intimidating and good looking and he's wearing a suit. He's gripping your hand really hard. Okay? So think about it. If you can hold eye contact strong, relaxed, and intermittent, which means you don't always have to hold eye contact like a sociopath. I think, you know, a healthy way of maintaining eye contact is maintaining it for short sprints, right? You maintain it, you're talking, and then you look away for a second and be like, yeah, it's interesting how some of these paintings in the house have actually helped us bring girls over, because what I'll tell them when I'm pulling them is, you can come back, but I hope, don't steal any of the art though. I hope you're not like an art thief, right? And then I'll look away, right? And I'll look back, right? So in the moments that you are looking, it's strong and it's relaxed, okay? Now, how you can practice that is putting yourself in high pressure social situations and pushing through, and trying to maintain eye contact, pushing through the discomfort, right? Trying to be present to the interaction and pushing through the discomfort. So it's obviously a skill you're going to have to build up. I used to do an exercise when I would just like walk on the street, and I would just like look at people as they would come towards me, and I would just like try to hold eye contact until they broke it. Or sometimes I'd sit on the subway and hold eye contact with strangers until they broke it. So think about it. Think how awkward that is, right? But it's like you learn to get comfortable with discomfort. You learn to endure awkward situations, right? And when you get good at that, then it's obviously easier to hold eye contact in any kind of social settings when you're talking to a girl. Because at least when you're talking to a girl, it's clear what you want. You want to hit on her. When you're just staring at some dude on the subway, waiting for him to break eye contact, it's kind of weird, right? Or some grandma on the subway. Okay, so that's eye contact. Very, very important. Practice it. Next, deep and resonant vocal tonality. So your voice is like the sexiest, a man's voice is like the sexiest part of their I don't know, being of their, it's like the most important honest signal, arguably. They're all, these are all important. They have everything to do with that. But, they say 90%, 97% of 93% of communication is nonverbal. So it's tonality, body language, facial expressions. 7%. 7% of communication is verbal. And it's crazy to me how some guys still obsess over what to say. Like, starting right now, you need to really understand how little importance what you say actually carries. It's like a nice bonus. It's literally like a nice bonus. Like if the conversation is interesting, it's a nice bonus. But first what you care about is, can you endure the vibe of the person? Is it engaging? A person can be talking about the weather and it can be engaging. And a person could be talking about something fascinating, like, I don't know, the history of the Silk Road or something. Or of the Prohibition era, or whatever it is. Something fascinating, but if they're telling it to you in a non-engaging, super monotonous, you said yourself that people have told you that you're kind of like, they speak in a monotone way, well, then you're going to bore them. You're going to speak like, yeah, so like in the 1920s, there was like the Prohibition, and during the Prohibition, like you couldn't really get alcohol anywhere, right? Like, it doesn't even matter what you're saying at that point. Like, you're done. You're done. Right? But you could be talking about the weather. It can be super engaging. Tomorrow, we're probably going to expect a lot of doom and gloom weather again. Or, we're probably going to be expecting a lot of doom and gloom weather over the next week. Maybe a little rain. Maybe a little, sunshine here and there. I can even get more intense. I could be like, dude, it's going to be fucking pouring tomorrow. Do you understand what that means? That means we have to bring an umbrella. My dude, wrap your mind around that. Super engaging, and I'm fucking talking about rain. So it's all about the vibe. It's all about the nonverbals. So, deep and resonant vocal tonality. Super, super important. Now, your voice isn't really nasally. People typically speak in 3 different ways. They speak either through their nose, their mouths, or their throat. You want to develop a voice where you speak through your throat, so that you push your voice into the air into your diaphragm. You notice how it's more resonant. No, nasal voice is the worst. Some students speaking like this, right? That's the absolute worst. You're pushing the air through your nose. And then like the average person will kind of speak something like through their mouth. So it's kind of like something like that, right? It's not nasally. So I would say for you, it's also kind of through the mouth. I was naturally someone who spoke through my mouth. And sometimes when I'm not conscious enough and I get carried away, I'll speak through my mouth. And it's kind of something like this. It's not as attractive or engaging as it is when you speak like this. You notice the difference, right? So, and we'll do vocal exercises and shit to work on that. But, man, I can't tell you the difference. Just it's like a magical difference when you're speaking with that kind of voice. Not just to girls, to people in general. They're immediately more engaged, right? Not to mention, we throw in controlled and varied vocal pace, right? So controlled, so notice I'm speaking kind of in a controlled, calm, collected manner, right? But there's also variation in my pace. So sometimes I might speed it up to emphasize something, or to capture a certain mood. Sometimes I might slow it down. Sometimes I might get carried away in trying to express something, right? So you see there's the variation in pace. There's also controlled and varied vocal inflections with an emphasis on down talk. So there's usually words will end with down talk or up talk. So down talk is there's an inflection at the end of inflection up or down at the end of a word or at the end of a sentence. And you want to generally aim to have downward inflections or down talk. So what does that mean? So, hi, I'm Matt from Montreal, and I like pizza, and I like to wear orange socks. So you notice how there's an inflection up at the end. Up is not good. How does that sound to you? It's almost like you're not sure, and you're always like trying to like, yeah, you're essentially signaling, I'm not sure. I'm kind of apologizing, right? As opposed to, hey, I'm Matt from Montreal. I like orange socks. Statement. I like blonde girls. Okay, so you're kind of unapologetic. You're just like, boom, boom. Now, of course, there are going to be situations where there will be use of upward inflections. Like, you know, if you're saying something sarcastic, etc. And what's the next one? Oh, projection and enunciation. Yeah, so generally you want to focus on down talk and you want to be conscious of it. Now, projection and enunciation, that's one you obviously have an issue with. You don't enunciate that well, and you're kind of faint and quiet, and you're not really projecting. It's like, yeah, right? So it doesn't allow you to have like a sense of presence in social situations. So, and as a result, you're not going to be as respected, as engaging, as attractive, etc. As valuable. Remember, it goes back to value, right? So, projection and enunciation. Dominant posture, and then relaxed and composed body language. Okay. So I'm going to be demonstrating some dominant posture and relaxed and composed body language. So imagine you're sitting, right? What's a dominant way to sit? Take up some space, right? You know, man spread, take up space, okay? Now let's imagine you're standing up, right? So what's a quick, easy fix to your posture? Shoulders back, chest out. Okay? That's it. And really practice this, right? And look up at the world. Lift your head up and look up at the world. So many people are looking down. So a quick, easy fix is shoulders back, chest out, and you look up at the world. Okay, so many people are looking down when they walk. They're almost scared to look up at the world. They're just looking into their phones and they're looking down. They're scared to make eye contact, right? This immediately puts you into kind of an assertive, confident, almost headspace. It's almost like a combative position. I think Jordan Peterson talks about it in his one of his new books, like when he's like, be like the lobster, like kind of put yourself in a combative position. But just like, this is like a dominant position. Bam, I'm an alpha male, right? You don't need to do it to a point of ridiculousness where you're kind of walking like this, unless you want to, satirize yourself. But honestly, I used to do this a lot. I used to like walk to and from the bus stop to go to work, 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back. Any opportunity I got, I would put my shoulders back, chest out, and I would just walk. And the next one is slow everything down, right? Let's see here. Yeah, relaxed and composed body language, controlled and varied facial expressions, right? So I would walk slower. I would move slower. Turn my head slower, right? Relaxed and composed body language. Same thing with my facial expressions. Controlled but varied facial expressions. Right? You don't want to be like twitching like this, right? But you also don't want to be constantly just like one facial expression. You want to be animated. You want to be dynamic, right? Sometimes you might be like, Sometimes you might be like, so. Sometimes you might be like, suspicious, right? So that's a quick, easy fix. You want to be conscious of this. You want You want to just slow everything down, take up more space, shoulders back, chest out, look up, and just practice that all the time. Okay, makes sense? So next is, so being positive and smiley is, well, I mean, smiley is a facial expression, right? But being positive, is, it's an honest signal, essentially, because it shows that, you know, it shows that you're a go-getter. It shows that you're someone who like takes initiative, who believes that things will work out. So remember, these honest signals are manifestations of your sexual and your social value. So if you're generally a guy who's in control, who's dominant, who's assertive, you're more than likely to be the kind of guy who's also positive. It's generally people who complain and who are negative that are the ones who are not doing those things, right? So being positive, being expressive and free. So what does that mean to be expressive and free? To be mentally uninhibited, to be unstifled, right? To share the things that are on your mind without feeling shame for being judged, right? If you want to, you know, speak about your passion, let's say about fitness, let's say fitness is your passion, right? If you're like super expressive about it, that's attractive, that's an honest signal. That means you're, what does that say about you? That you're confident, you're mentally uninhibited, you're assertive. And you know what's interesting is when you find someone who's speaking passionately and is being expressive, and he's speaking about something that he's interested in, I don't know, art, let's say golf. You may not even necessarily be interested in that topic, but if he says it in this passionate, engaging way, you'll find yourself gravitating towards that. So it's not just a matter of how you deliver it, but if someone is passionate about something, you're like, I am fascinated by the fact that this person is fascinated by golf, for example. Like, I don't care about golf. But if someone's like, dude, like golf, like you don't even understand. It's like this game and like the whole culture around it and the politics. And, you know, he ties that in with this and films. And it's like, whoa, that's interesting, right? It adds like a whole dimension, new dimension to the game that you haven't like considered, right? So being expressive is an honest signals. Acts of confidence and leadership. So micro acts of confidence and leadership, whether you approach a girl at a bar, right? Whether you approach a girl during the day, whether you tell your friends, hey, I know this really good Thai place, we're gonna go. Whether you make some kind of an executive decision at your company as the manager, right? These are all acts of confidence and leadership that suggest that you're probably a confident person with leadership qualities. Okay, so it's an honest signal. Wit and humor. So having a certain brand of wit and humor that you personally enjoy, and you're sharing it because you like it, and maybe others will like it as well. That signals to people that you're confident. It's an honest signal as well. You're confident, you're self-sufficient, right? It's also an indicator of your social value. Oh, well, he belongs to this kind of subculture maybe. He likes irony. He likes satire, right? So it's an honest signal that kind of like captures both sexual and social value. So wit and humor. And remember, humor should be mostly first to push your buttons, then to entertain others. Like if someone doesn't find your joke funny, that's not as important as whether you find it funny. Okay. I mean, yeah, there is an element, there's this whole notion of catering to your audience that we're going to explore as well, right? Like you can't just be like talking about things when people around you are just completely like unengaged or don't understand. Then you're going to lose them. So it's a matter of like pinging off of your environment, testing waters It's like, okay, this joke didn't land. Okay, maybe she's this type of girl. Let me dumb it down a bit. Okay. So next, indifference. A genuine sense of indifference is an honest signal. Right? Where does indifference come from? Indifference or... Yeah, where does indifference come from? Generally, it's like, if you're indifferent about something, it's generally because you've been desensitized to it, probably. You no longer see as much value in it. Right? You're not as excited about, I don't know, fancy cars or traveling to Europe, maybe because you've done it. Right? Maybe because you don't value it as much. Maybe you banged a bunch of models, so you're like, okay, you're a model. Cool. You're not as excited about someone who's from LA, maybe. Like in my case, like I've lived in LA, right? It's interesting, like after I've lived in LA, I'm like, oh, this is just like a city with like real people that are just like hustling and like, yeah, they're in the movies. Like you're kind of desensitized, your perspective changes. So you're like, okay, whatever, you're from LA. But some people might be like, oh, dude, that's cool, you're from LA. Because they have some like rosy vision of what LA might be like. So indifference communicates abundance, it communicates experience, it communicates preferences and tastes, right? You're not easily, basically, impressed. Next. And you see that sometimes like in a girl, if she's like acting kind of like indifferent. Like it might be like a front she's putting on, but it might be because like there's nothing that special maybe about you until you prove yourself otherwise. Like if you're just like, hey, I'm a lawyer, and I'm just like, okay. Especially if it's like a high value girl. Okay, next. Wisdom and experience. So, well, we talked about how indifference is as a byproduct of experience. Wisdom and experience itself is an honest signal. It shows abundance, shows self-sufficiency. It shows, it signals age, or age signals wisdom. Women are often attracted, to older guys. They mate across and up social hierarchies because generally men who are older are more established, more confident, more experienced, etc. So wisdom is an honest signals. Wisdom and experience. Boundaries. So boundaries are honest signals because they're an indication of your leadership, your self-sufficiency, your confidence, your assertiveness. We talked about this, right? And the last one is social intuition. So social intuition it's an honest signal and it's a social value quality in itself, right? Because what does it mean to be socially intuitive? Right? It means understanding how the social structures around you work, social dynamics, just not only social dynamics, but just knowing how the world around you works and knowing how to adapt to it. So knowing when it's appropriate to raise your voice, knowing when it's appropriate to tell a funny story, knowing when it's appropriate to say an inappropriate joke, knowing when it's appropriate to ask for a certain kind of favor from someone, right? Knowing when it's appropriate to sexually escalate on a girl at a park versus when you meet a girl at a park versus when you meet a girl in a nightclub, right? Knowing how to dress for certain occasions. Those are all forms of social intuition, right? And knowing how to relate to someone who's a young professional versus someone who's a hipster. Knowing how to like push certain buttons, right? So that's an honest signal insofar as it communicates that you kind of get it. You get it. Right? You know how to conduct yourself. You know how to make people around you feel good. You know how to not make yourself look stupid or others around you look stupid. That's pretty much it. And that also suggests that you have the qualities of potentially being a leader, of being someone who's charismatic. Right? Those are people who are usually generally very socially intuitive. And by the way, that's emotional intelligence, interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence. Knowing yourself and understanding others is something also is not innate to people. It's something I had to build and some people have to build. But it allows you to be more socially intuitive, basically. Okay, so does that make sense? I know that was a lot. Yeah, as you go through this, you gotta look back at some of these and think, well, how was my body language? How was my tonality? Did I express myself freely? Did I set any boundaries? Right? You'll start to kind of get this more and more accurate picture of how you conduct yourself. It's almost like you'll be holding up a mirror to your interactions every time and becoming more and more self-aware, more and more in control of how you are. And just being more attuned with all these variables. It's very powerful. And you'll know. Did I do too much of this? Not enough of that? Marcus and Martin, as they're going on their pickup sessions and stuff, they kind of analyze their interactions. They're like, oh, how did I come off here? What did I do here? But at the back of their mind, they're already at least aware of these principles. So that is that. Oh. And so first of all, recognize that everything is cultivated. Mindsets, qualities, skills, knowledge. Okay? There are no shortcuts.